What do I mean by post-traumatic stress disorder from the inside out? About a year ago, I saw a soldier who had completed his tour of duty in Iraq, and he gave me a better understanding of exactly what PTSD is from the soldier's point of view. What he told me is that when you are a Marine or another member of the armed forces, you go through basic training and you go in there with a head of steam, wanting to save the world, wanting to be a hero, all filled with all this energy, and you are broken down, and all that energy is directed towards being able to execute a mission and being able to be focused on your buddies, the people who are in your unit. That's all you think about, the mission and your buddies, and your brain is actually reconnected so that it is focused entirely on those two things, mission and your buddies. And you're told along the way that there will be collateral damage. What does that mean? Is that civilians will be harmed, civilians will be killed because war is not pretty. You're also told that you may experience some of that with some of your buddies being shot, maimed, or killed. And then you're instructed about how to deal with that psychologically, but it's not the same as when you're finally deployed. When you're finally deployed and you arrive in a foreign land, it really is foreign, and then you're on a mission. And all the time you're feeling anxious, but you're still pretty connected to all the training you've had. And then what happens is in this particular soldier's situation, he was directed to take out a home on the outskirts of a village, and when he and his unit shot it all up, when he and the other members of his unit were directed to take out that house because they thought gunners were in there. When he and other members of his unit were directed to take out this house because they thought gunners were in there, they did exactly that. And then when the coast was clear, they went into the house to discover that they'd killed a family of 4, including a grandfather who was holding a child, a dog who lay dead at the entrance of the house, and a mother in a back room. And he said the horror of that overtook him. And he couldn't erase that. And even though he had been trained how to deal with it, there was this feeling, I can't keep doing this. But he kept it to himself. He felt like he was the only one who didn't have the courage to deal with that trauma. And so from that point on, his focus became more on how to get through his tour of duty. He did focus on completing the mission and taking care of his buddies, but a part of him had sort of sloughed off in his mind. And all he could think about was, I got to get out of this war and get home and be safe. Finally, about 6 months later, he did finish that tour of duty and he did come home. But when he came home, what happened is he isolated himself from his family. He started drinking excessively because he wanted to numb his brain. Part of his feeling, as he described it, is that when he was in the war, he felt his brain was shaken and traumatized, and that if it was traumatized again, it might fragment, that he might lose his mind. And so what he tended to do when he came back from the war was to isolate himself from situations that might trigger that. But the more he isolated and insulated himself from the outside world and even his family, the more he was prey to his own imagination. And then what would happen is occasionally he would get boxed in or cornered, perhaps in traffic, or his wife or kids yelling, and that would trigger this animal fight or flight survival mode. There was even a time when he became violent towards one of his kids, and his wife kicked him out of the house, and that was part of the reason why he came to see me. And what he shared with me is that when you're originally traumatized, you feel this vulnerability. You feel like your brain is shaken up, but you haven't quite lost it. But then you live your life feeling that if you go through it again, you won't make it back. And that's why it's so important for returning soldiers who have experienced this trauma, which has shaken up their brain and made them pull inside and make them feel like they are cowards when they're really not. It's important to get them together in groups to be able to share their experience all the way from training to deployment to that initial horrifying event that cause their brain to shatter. It's only then when they start to share things and they begin to realize that they weren't cowards, they were traumatized, and they weren't the only ones to go through that. It's only when they can share that they can start to find some peace, and actually their mind starts to come back to them. And this needs to be a central approach to helping returning soldiers and veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder.